Darren Dreger with us on the show this morning. If you're watching on YouTube and if you're not yet subbed to the channel, we would greatly appreciate that. Dregs, what a win. The series is now tied at 2. And I think first thing that everybody's thinking last night's game, got the full Evan Bouchard experience. Yeah. I mean, he was -3, and then he essentially saves the season for you with a couple of goals. It just, last night was a perfect summarization of what you get in that guy. Special offensively and troublesome in other areas sometimes.
I mean, that's fair. That's accurate. I had this conversation with Carlo Koliakovo earlier this morning, and I referred to Evan Bouchard as a dwinger, right? Like he's half defense, half winger. He's a dwinger. And Carlo corrected me. He said, he's not a defenseman. He's not. But I mean, there again, that's the impact that a player with that level of offensive confidence can have, right? You're right. -3. I think Nurse was -3 as well, right?
Both
going into that third period. So those two guys in particular needed to elevate their game in every way, shape, and form with Matthias Ekholm on the bench. I mean, he's just, he's hurt, created an enormous hole. Well, that's not the way that Knobloch was hoping. The coaching staff was expecting they were going to influence the game, both being -3 going into the third period. But then Bouchard just takes care of business. So as much as you kind of got to watch if you're an Oilers fan with your hands over your face, defensively, the offensive game.
Like with one eye through,
Exactly. From center line forward, if he's got the puck or the Oilers possess the puck, then you expect some good things are going to happen. That tying goal, I mean, that's a mistake by Quentin Byfield, but you could clearly see the level of confidence that Bouchard had late in the game with the game on the line. I mean, obviously the Oilers lose that game, and it's a much different scenario going into game 5. Clearly a much different scenario. So now all of a sudden you're not selling hope. It's a best of 3. And now the coin is flipped and the LA Kings are going, geez, we had them here. We had them on the ropes, and instead we allow Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the top players for the Edmonton Oilers to take over and maybe take over the series in, again, what has become a 3-game outcome.
Well, and just on Bouchard, again, Draisaitl post-game referring to him as a genius.
Yeah, he said genius.
When he's calling you a genius, that's something. We mentioned there's the Hiller Challenge Friday. There's and you mentioned the Byfield failed clearance Bouchard gave me. There are key points in series, and I get it, and momentum changes. But is it maybe simple right now? Is just the Oilers finding themselves on the special teams, both sides, the PK and the PP, and will be a determining factor here moving forward in the next 3?
Well, special teams for sure, but it feels like for the most part, not entirely. I mean, we can look at the mistakes the Oilers made in that game yesterday and go, okay, well, that can happen as you move forward. But it felt like in the second half of the hockey game, maybe those mistakes were less and less. So if that becomes the norm, where they're adhering to the details and they're playing structured as a group, that's going to alleviate some of the pressure on the goaltending. So maybe that gets stabilized here in this best of 3. And so special teams become even a bigger factor for sure. I like the idea now that the seed of doubt has been planted in Los Angeles. And I wonder, you look at the minutes, you look at how much Jim Hiller leans on his big 4 defense. He essentially kind of wears it back to a top 9 forwards. Okay, well, this series is going to get more intense moving forward. The physical expectation is going to be elevated, all of that. I'm not saying that now the LA Kings are on the ropes, because that would be unfair to them. They're a better team than what they were a year ago, but it's hard to shorten your bench, especially when you have the playoff experience of the Edmonton Oilers and the appearance anyway that they're starting to get it and they're starting to tighten some things up. So, if the team that finished the second half or at least played that third period last night for Edmonton shows up from the drop of puck in game 5, then the series has shifted and the LA Kings have a problem.
Well, yeah, it's interesting with the Kings and a possible problem because, you're right. They're going home, tied at 2, still have home ice, which is all great for them. But in 3 of the third periods now, and obviously in game 1, they managed to get the winner late and survive a monumental collapse. but the last two games have been owned by the Edmonton Oilers in the third period as well. How much of this third period play not just motivates the Oilers, but should have the Kings somewhat concerned? Because, I mean, if they can lock things down, this series might already be over. You know, like it's been that type of series so far.
I hear you, and I think that's valid. How much of this can the Kings manage? I mean, that's a good question. And obviously, the answers are in front of us here in the next three. But, I mean, you can pour over the videotape. I mean, the harsh reality is if it comes down to their best versus Edmonton's best, Edmonton's going to win the series. With all due respect, I mean, LA's got some very capable, very good players. Anze Kopitar is going into the Hall of Fame. This we know, right? Their goaltending with Darcy Kemper is much improved on what it was a year ago. But can you really contain Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl? You can't. You can try, but not if they're getting help, right? So it can't be about two players. So let's see if the defense of the Oilers can hold up. And you don't expect Evan Bouchard to do what he did in that third period, night in and night out, right? That's just not real. But somebody else is capable of stepping up in that capacity, right? They've got the horses up front. And that's where I think I'd be a bit weary if I were the LA Kings. When I'm looking at the tape and I'm looking at, okay, well, how can we further try and look after Draisaitl and McDavid? And I don't know that you can entirely. So maybe your defensive structure remains the same, but it's just sharpened a little bit when you look around the top nine of the Oilers and make sure that all of your attention isn't poured on those two guys. And you make sure that you've got Nuge looked after and all the other pieces, because Edmonton now is a taste. And we saw what they can do with that, you know, through their march to the Stanley Cup final last year.
Dregs, we can't recap this game last night and not talk about the significant impact of Corey Perry. I thought prior to Bouchard sort of stepping up and saving the day, I thought Corey Perry was their most impactful player in last night's hockey game. He turns 40 in like 2 weeks. It's remarkable what he's been able to do so far in the playoffs. And I was surprised by how successful his regular season was. So maybe I'm a fool for being surprised that he's found even another level here. But some guys just still have it, regardless of the age or experience that they're rolling in with.
I mean, I don't have his career earnings in front of me.
It's a lot.
It's Tiny, the Great Dane. Yeah, he's like, you should have that information at your finger. What
do
are you
your
doing?
job, Dregs.
Yes. But he has earned every single penny, every step of the way of his National Hockey League career. And what I admire most about Perry is, you remember back in the day in Anaheim, this guy was a prolific goal scorer. He's a 50 goal scorer, for heaven's sake. And then as the game changed and maybe his level of play kind of weakened a little bit with the pace and all of that, well, he adjusted. He made significant changes, but the spirit, the will, the competitiveness, the top tier teammate status of Corey Perry has always been there. It's always been there from day one. He never cheats anybody. He doesn't. He just doesn't. So, you know, the money that this man has made, he's earned every nickel of it, every single cent. So I'm not surprised that he's a contributing factor. I'm really not. I mean, again, from day one, you know, date back to his major junior success, right? I mean, this guy has been historically built for the playoffs. And again, what's equally impressive is the work that he puts in during the offseason, off days, in keeping himself as finely tuned as he possibly can. And can you imagine the stuff that this guy's played through over the years?
Oh, man.
Is probably playing through now. Okay, granted, he's not as fast as he once was, and he was never noted as being the fastest player, not even close out there, but he made up for it just, again, with that spirit of compete and his knack around the net and the physicality, the toughness, all of that. I could go on and on and on. You know, and I just, he's one of my all-time favorite players. He is, and the fact that he can contribute at a high level is just elevating my thoughts of Corey Perry. In his days, he's so deep into the back nine. We can clearly see this, but you wonder about next year. You wonder about the year. He's going to be one of those guys like John Tavares that will play until he just decides he can't play anymore, physically or otherwise. He's just so good all around.
It's funny because if you canvassed a lot of fans here talking about favorite players and stuff, he's slowly working his way into that regard, and you never would have thunk it in this market some time ago. But I want to get your thoughts, too. Death taxes and the Jets becoming completely undone in the opening round of the playoffs, Dreger. This is something, again, hey, adversity maybe is the toughest team to beat when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, first of all, I am going to give credit where credit is due, and that's the play of the St. Louis Blues. You know, this team proved again in the second half that they are formidable. Coaching of Jim Montgomery is top tier. It just is. But now you go over to the other side, and how is it that the Winnipeg Jets could jump out to the early 2-0 series lead on home ice, get absolutely pounded in Game 3 in St. Louis, and by playoff standards, that's pretty lopsided the way they lost yesterday afternoon as well. So what's going on? Is it the will and the physicality of the Blues? I think that's a big factor. And I'm surprised at how certain players have been pushed to the sideline from Winnipeg's standpoint. You know, the top guys, Mark Scheifele, I did not think was impactful even a little bit in yesterday's game. Might extend that to Kyle Connor. I know he scored. I'm talking about the top line I follow, right? But then, of course, you know, the elephant in the room is Connor Hellebuyck. And he hasn't been good enough in the last couple of games. I mean, that's pretty obvious. He's been pulled back-to-back games in St. Louis in the third period. So this is going to be one of those real mental toughness challenges for this group. And I know it's cliche to say everybody's got to be better. I get that. But they need something special physically from the third line, the Lowry line. That line is built to compete in a playoff series against St. Louis Blues. The Scheifele line, without question, has to be better. But if Connor Hellebuyck doesn't dial into Vezina form, I don't even want to think about what the reaction will be like in Winnipeg if they lose this series. So many of us picked him to win the Stanley Cup, for heaven's sake. So shame on us. It's far from over. I'm not writing them off. But again, it's no different than the Oilers and the Kings, man. It's a best of three. And I just, like, Braden Shen has been just incredible in this series, not offensively. He scored yesterday, not offensive, physically. How this guy is doing it. You know, we talked about Corey Perry. You know, Braden Shen's just an old warhorse, man. He just knows how to play in the playoffs. So this one's going to be fun to watch, I think. And if it's not fun to watch from a Canadian perspective, then my job gets tough as an insider, because you start to look at potential changes and, you know, what sort of roster attention might be required, and on and on and on it goes.
Dregs, we appreciate you getting up this morning, man. Really meant a lot to us. Thanks a lot for popping on. It's terrific.
Hey, unless I'm in the air, fellas, or I'm puking sick, I'm always here for you. My alarm clock works. Apparently it doesn't in the Rishaug household.
Thanks a lot, Dregs. We'll check in next Monday, man.
All right, guys.
There you go.
Thanks.
That's Darren Dreger, Ryan Dregs podcast, and obviously one of the best hockey insiders in the biz with TS.
I mean, hell, you don't even factor in the time change.